What's going on YouTube? Today I thought we would dive further into the storyline of the Darkest Shore and discuss Nerthus, the goddess who is in a way the focal point of this map, or at least the focal point of the Easter egg. When you're completing the Easter egg, you will eventually find her ritual room, and you will go there to perform several sacrifices throughout the Easter egg. You also need to find her 3 sons in order to enter the room, where once you enter, you will then find them buried. And for those who play this game but don't really know what's going on in the story, it might seem kinda strange because above ground you have just this hellscape of an island, and below you have this ancient burial site, and it actually relates to a lot of real-life mythology and Germanic paganism. In order to understand Nerthus' role within the zombie storyline, we should probably dive into her history and understand who Nerthus was as a goddess. The best description of Nerthus actually comes from the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote the novel Germania, which was a detailed history of the German people on the outskirts of the Roman Empire. According to German paganism, Nerthus was the goddess of fertility, and they believe that she interests herself in the human affairs and rides among their peoples. In an island on the ocean stands a sacred grove, and in that grove a consecrated cart draped in cloth, which none but the priest may touch. The priest perceives the presence of the goddess in this holy of holies and attends to her in deepest reverence as the cart is drawn by her heifers. Then follow days of rejoice and merrymaking in every place that she designs to visit and be entertained. No one goes to war, no one takes up arms, every object of iron is locked away. Then and only then are peace and quiet known and love, until the priest again restores the goddess to her temple when she had her fill of human company. After that, the cart, the cloth, and if you care to believe, the goddess herself are washed and cleaned in a secluded lake. This service is performed by slaves who are immediately afterwards drowned in the lake. Thus, mystery begets terror, and pious, reluctant to ask what that sight can be that only those doomed to die may see. That description comes from Tacitus's Germania, and it mirrors what we saw in our Easter egg quite well. Nerthus isn't actually in a secluded lake in-game, but is instead in this secluded area where several streams actually flow into, and she stands before a pool of blood, and this pool of blood begins to fill up as we complete the Easter egg, and the blood as well runs down the statue. It's interesting because the myth by Tacitus describes her coming as a time of peace, yet it flips it on its head in-game and turns it into this very gruesome and bloody scene. It's interesting what they did there. However, we do mirror the sacrifices. We end up sacrificing several characters such as the Wussling, and you'll notice even above his head it says sacrifice, much like the slaves within the original myth by Tacitus. So that's probably where a lot of the inspiration for the Easter egg comes from, why we have this secluded room where several streams flow into, and we have a pool of blood before which we perform many rituals and sacrifice several people. As for her sons, there really isn't much to draw from them. The best description of Nerthus comes from Germania, and there really isn't much of a mention of her sons within this description. My guess is that the sons are there to reference the fact that she is the goddess of fertility, and they may also go on to represent other forms of Geistkraft. We're just not sure. This area though, this temple, which is supposed to be a ritual site for her, is the hiding spot of one of the parts of Frederick Barbarossa's sword. One of the things you need to remember is that Barbarossa's sword was deconstructed and hidden across several areas around the world. So we had one within Middelburg, and then now we have one in Helgoland beneath the ground by the Nerthus statue, and that statue stands guard. You'll notice that the statue's holding what looks like the skull of a bull, but underneath that skull is actually the pommel of the sword. So that's how Nerthus connects to our Easter egg as well as the greater story within the Darkest Shore. However, I also think it's important to discuss the relationship between the island in which this map takes place, Helgoland, and Nerthus. You see, Nerthus has an island sanctuary. The thing is, nobody knows where this island sanctuary is. Many people believe it's in the Baltic Sea. However, the game takes place within the North Sea, so this has kind of been a bit of contention and a place of debate when discussing Nerthus. And I'd like to read you actually a segment from a book called The Origin of the English Nation. It reads, "We have evidence for the existence of island sanctuaries both in the North Sea and in the Baltic. In the former, the only case of that is Helgoland, which is sacred to a god named Fosite. The island was famous in the Middle Ages for its fertility, and moreover it possessed a sacred spring which might possibly correspond to the Secretus Lactus mentioned by Tacitus. On the other hand, it has no trees even in the time of Adam of Bremen, when its area was considerably greater than it is at its present. But there is a much more serious objection which we have already noticed to the identification of Nerthus' island with Helgoland. In view of its proximity to the coast of Chauchi and to the Frisi, it is hardly credible that Helgoland can have been the center of a religious confederacy in which these tribes had no part, especially since in the later times it was actually a Frisian sanctuary." Basically what this is saying is that Helgoland matches the descriptions of an island that could be related to Nerthus. It has the spring, and it's also been associated with fertility. So the spring could have been where the sanctuary to Nerthus was, and then the island gets its association to fertility from Nerthus. However, the people who actually lived on that island, their religion had nothing to do with Nerthus. They worshipped the god Fosite, also known as Forseti. And we've talked about this before on our channel. I said this god could have been a subject within this map, but it seems as though they went in a different direction and they actually chose Nerthus rather than Forseti. So basically, in real life, Helgoland isn't actually associated with Nerthus. You can make claims that maybe it is, but most people agree that it isn't. However, in game, it seems as though they've kind of spun mythological history and chosen Helgoland as the site to have Nerthus be from. And this probably is because they wanted it to coincide with the bombing of Helgoland. This is actually a real-life historic event that we see go on at the end of the Easter egg. That may be why they chose this island. That's going to wrap things up for this video. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I'm always covering the zombie storyline, so if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next one. Have a great day, and bye.